Welcome to the Advisor Summit, the podcast where financial advisors gain analytical insights and tactical strategies from the industry's top minds. The new episode is starting now.
Erica Pauly, welcome to the Advisor Summit. I am so excited today to go over national benchmarks by advisory practice size. And this is one I feel like we've talked about for a long time and is on our hearts because a lot of times what happens is some of these smaller solo advisor firms get compared in industry benchmarks to a lot of these larger firms, and it's really unfair. So I'm excited today to just dive in and say, hey, here's your truth for smaller firms, here's the truth for larger firms, and all of the differences in between. So thank you for joining. We are ready and excited to hear all you have to say for sure.
I love when you invite me to be a part of your party. So
You don't, but I'm always thankful you're willing. So I'll take you anytime we can. So it's all good, but I'm excited. Yeah, this benchmark study really broke down different firms by office size and is creating different benchmarks, which we'll go over here later in the episode. But one, why was that important to you? Why did you feel the need to really break it down by different sizes?
You kind of hit the nail on the head. I coach so many offices. We have so many different sizes of practices, and I'll throw a benchmark at them. And so often they're like, well, that doesn't really apply, or do you have something different? Several years ago, we did it like an FMO specific one, broken out by different types, but it wasn't really sizes. And so I've never gotten to look at our aggregation of data broken down by office size. So I personally was just curious. Secondly, I wanted to know if there actually were different answers that I could get to people when they come at me with that, I was going to say excuse, but that's not the right word, with that thought process. And I will say too, it isn't necessarily that we're changing benchmarks for all of them. I really just wanted it to be more of like, what is the national average here? From in a compilation standpoint, when everything goes together, our national benchmarks don't change, and the data proves it, and we can see it even when we look at it by office size. But I did feel like it was necessary to give them national averages, right? So smaller offices as a whole don't hit the national benchmark, but they're all together. That sort of a message, I guess, was the goal for here.
Yep, love it. And that's a good distinction. It's not necessarily benchmarks, it's more averages and what the data is showing as a whole. So yes. That's really big. Let's talk about kind of the different segment sizes that you took so people have kind of a good knowledge of this is the size that I'm looking at so they know what category that they fit into.
Yep. So we made 4 different categories. So the first one was 0 to 40 million, and this is annual production of annuity and managed money. So we don't include life in here. 0 to 40 million, 41 to 80, 81 to 120, and then above 120 million. So what was really cool about that, I came up with those because I felt like that's typically what I saw. It's like section wise when I did coaching. But then when we actually looked out of our 106 practices that were involved in it, it was an almost even split of the number of offices that were included in each. So there were 31 offices in the 0 to 40 category, 28 offices in the 41 to 80, 24 offices in the 81 to 120, and 25 offices in 120 million plus. So wow. It was a great, I love when studies work out that way, so I don't have just like a really small subset in one. Yeah. So it was a very even, great study. So those are the segments and how many offices were included in each one of those segments.
That's perfect. I love when the maths, that's the best part of data for sure.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing that surprised you when comparing smaller firms to larger firms?
Yeah. The biggest surprise that I had was the largest firms, their most stable funnel was radio. And that was not happening for any of the other segments. Which just goes to show how powerful radio can be. It is a long-term funnel, and it does take a lot of time, but these 120 million offices have been doing it for a really long time, and it's become one of their most stable funnels, and we didn't see that through any of the other segments. So that was really surprising. It was also surprising how the smaller firms specifically struggled with their sales process. Their stick rates were lower, and their close rates were lower. And then I dug into that even further, and it was specifically dinner seminars for the smaller offices that were really a struggle point for them, for all of them. I have lots of thoughts, and we'll get there later onto why that is. So those were the two differences that surprised me. One positive that surprised me that I thought was fascinating but totally made sense was the percent of business coming from existing clients and replacements and referrals. It was really, really high for the small firms, and then it dipped down low for the middle two segments, and then it went back high for the high firms. So actually the smallest and the largest firms had that in common. And I thought that was fascinating. It's like they all get forgotten while everyone's scaling their business and growing.
Yep.
And then they like remember them again. So I thought that was really interesting.
Everybody's going after the shiny object and they're forgetting what got them there in the first place. And then once you're settled and good and you've got your marketing funnels dialed in, then you're ready to go and you're going to remember those. That's huge. Speaking of marketing in general, what did the ideal marketing dial look like for each segment? You talked about radio was really key with kind of these larger offices, and existing clients and referrals obviously massive with these smaller offices. But was there something that you found where said, hey, this is the perfect dial? Well, not perfect because that's not real, but what is the ideal dial for each of these segments?
Yeah. So all of them, that goes really into the weeds. It's all in the study. So I'm not going to go specifically through each of them simply because they're ranges too. But really what we look at for a healthy marketing dial is composed of 4 different segments. So the first segment is existing clients and referrals and replacements in the past few years because those have kind of lumped in there. So overall, between all of them, we want that to be between 40 and 60%. Our old benchmark has always been 30 to 40, but people are writing more new business. Especially the replacements have really come into play the last few years. I think that'll start dying down, but we'll probably hit around 40. It's been 60% the last several years. So across the board, 40 to 60% of your business should be coming from existing clients, replacements, and referrals. And then we want 20% coming from some sort of a live event. I don't care if it's workshops. I don't care if it's dinner seminars. Don't care what it is, but it's supposed to be a live type of event with people sitting down, dinner or no dinner, don't care. Then we want to have some other stable funnel. That can be 10 to 20% of your business that, let's pretend dinner seminars is 20%. Great. Then the workshops can be 10 to 20%, if that makes sense. Doesn't really matter how you, like the higher offices, the 120 million and above, their stable funnel was radio, right? So it doesn't have to be a live event. And then we want 10 to 20% from shiny ideas. You will see that there are not very many shiny ideas when we're small. There's more shiny ideas as we scale. And there was not one shiny marketing funnel at all for the 120 million. It was the most classic. It was like radio, dinner seminars, workshops, referrals, and existing clients. Like nothing crazy for the bigwigs. They've done all classic stuff. So shiny ideas definitely get smaller the larger that the practice grows.
Yeah, I think it's probably for 2 reasons, so correct me if I'm wrong. But one, I feel like the shiny ideas cost money, so that's typically the smaller offices don't have necessarily the funds to do the shiny ideas. And then 2, the larger offices have tried them all and have realized, hey, we're good at these, let's stick with these. We don't necessarily need to add more because we can just hone in and turn the dial and add more funds to do more of what we already know works. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I'd say both, but the second one more so because they've just figured it out and they're like, we're not going to go off script. We figured out the script and it works and we don't need to try anything new.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's start with the smaller scale offices, the 0 to 40 million, which is kind of a large range. I know some people listening are like, I would love to be at 40 million. And others are like, 40 million is not a small office. It was for the study, 40 million was a small office. But for the study itself, between that range, what were the most common mistakes that you saw that kind of keep advisors stuck before leveling up to that next segment?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we saw was their sales process. And again, to your point, and I definitely want to hit on that, a brand new advisor who's bringing in 3 million for the year is a very, very different practice than 40 million. Yeah. But yes, you all have to keep in mind, we have offices who are doing, 300 million in the year. So they're way above the 120 also. We just had to do it out of fairness for segments. But what we see for the smaller offices around the 0 to 40 is they're just starting to pay for events. So they were doing webinars or they were doing digital because they're cheaper leads. You talked about this earlier. They don't want some super expensive shiny idea. They just want something that will bring in leads. So they start with digital usually, referral-based events, but then we start them looking at dinner seminars that are expensive and they don't know how to deal with the leads that are coming in. This will pair with an answer that I have later about average case size. The average case size grew in relation to the office segments growing. So the smallest average case size nationwide were the smaller offices. That does not mean that higher average people are not attracted to them. It means they cannot close the higher average case size people. So they're not trained in the high net worth, which is why our close rates are lower. And so specifically for the smaller offices, the stick rate for dinner seminars was extremely low, which messed with the entire aggregation of data, right? So when we look at the prospect story, the smaller offices had a lower stick rate overall. They had a lower close rate overall, but when I dug in, it was strictly because of dinner seminars. I even parsed out workshops, and workshops were like normal. Workshops were totally fine. It was dinner seminars specifically for the smaller offices.
Interesting.
And it's also because I think the average case sizes are growing and they're seeing higher net worth individuals and they're not prepared for that. They're used to being a little bit more transactional. So very long-winded answer, but that's kind of where we saw the small segment going.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people that are in that smaller segment that want to be trained better on how to close higher net worth individuals? Should they be reaching out to their VPs at their FMOs, or is that the best case? Okay, get training.
Yeah, a lot of the IMOs and FMOs are starting trainings on this, and they'll bring in somebody who's already closing high net worth, and they'll talk about their process. Okay. That's where I've seen the best training. But from coaching advisors, I could have told you this without seeing the data, that the higher, larger offices have way more capacity and way more training and way more processes in closing the higher net worth individuals.
Yeah.
And they're coming from dinner seminars too. Yes. That's in our study, in our aggregate study. For everything, the dinner seminars had the highest average case size. So again, this is why I love data, because it all's connecting. And this is why that makes sense that they're struggling here. They shouldn't feel bad that they're struggling here, but they do need training.
At what point does an office really turn the corner operationally? And is there a revenue band where things start to look dramatically different?
Great question. And it does tie to revenue, but it also just ties to practice size. Okay. Basically all three segments prior to the largest segment are all over the map. And they change, and seminars, like the smaller ones are trying seminars and they're trying new stuff. The middle two segments have a bunch of shiny ideas, and we see the turn at the 120 mark. It is very clear. It's always been clear in my data that the offices, and maybe it's 100 million, if we wanted just to give it like a clean cut there, but it becomes very clear that their processes are honed in, their marketing funnels are honed in. Typically, they tend to be higher in managed money, although we just did a study and it seems to combat some of that. But I would say that the consistency happens around the 100 million mark for sure. And we see it just all throughout the data.
Yep. And that's 100 million of new assets brought in per year, not necessarily 100 million when they're under managed money. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And I think that's true. I think that's true with anything though. You have your processes, you typically have your people aligned there as well. You know what you're doing, and it's simply adding more money to the funnel and turning up the dial. That's pretty tried and true and seen. So I can see how that would logically make sense also. Average case size. This is something you kind of touched base on, but I really want to dive into. And the data shows that the average case size grows significantly as offices get bigger. And we've seen that, time and time, study and study. Is that because bigger firms naturally attract bigger clients, or because they've built better processes?
I loved this question, and I quasi already answered it. Every firm of every size can attract every type of person. They can definitely attract high net worth. The issue is the process, the sales process specifically on closing them. And it's so correlated and so linked when we look at it. In the study, by the way, for everybody, sorry, it's 27 pages. It's very long, but on page 15 is where we see that happening. And it is a dramatic jump. So the offices that are 0 to 40 million, they're sitting at a $420,000 average case size. So that's our first one. The next is the 41 to 80, and that's sitting at $593,000. So there's a huge jump there. That's $170,000 jump in average case size. Then we have the 81 to 120, and that's sitting at 603. So just a tiny jump right there. Those two kind of sit very similar.
Interesting.
And then above 120 is 653,000. So it's an additional $53,000 jump per new client written. So we go from 420 to 653. That is a huge difference in who people are writing as an average. And again, data speaks for itself. We can definitely see that it isn't because it's just who they're attracting, it's who they're able to close and plan for in the process.
Yeah. And that's huge. And I think, again, being trained on how to close these people is massive. There has to be a training. And if your IMO or FMO isn't doing that, I would say that's kind of difficult. That's one of the main things is they're acting as your marketer. So talk to them, reach out to them. That's also probably on a lot of advisors for not reaching out. So the buck does not fall with your IMO. Do not blame them. Go ask them and then come talk to me once you're done with that. Okay?
Yeah.
So one thing I also, as I was reading through your 27-page study, which is, it was great. It was long, but it was beautiful and it was so well done and it was really eye-catching, honestly. But one surprising takeaway I saw was really how similar a lot of firms are operationally across the board, despite their size. So advisors love saying my business is different. If I have $1 for every advisor I talk to that's like, yeah, but I'm so unique. I just want to be like, yeah, your mom thinks you're special. You're not. We've seen it all. We've seen.
I bet
that's
you do.
Harsh.
That's
but
very
you know
Molly
what?
of you.
I won't say it to your face. I'll be
Just so
thinking
everyone
it,
knows,
though.
I would never say that. Molly
Erica
might.
would never. Erica would never. That's why I'm not client facing very often. But, everyone's like, oh no, I'm different. And now we've seen, we have categories of the different sectors. But realistically, can you talk about kind of really how similar everybody truly is when doing an advisor practice? And sorry for offending everyone. It's fine.
Yeah,
I say that a lot.
Right. We'll have an apology episode later. No, but I love that you say that because it's true. And I wanna validate everybody after Molly just came in and ripped you one. But the truth is all of you guys do run certain things different in your office. But that is why aggregation of data and studies is so important because we can actually see there are going to be some of you that are really, really high over here, but there's a lot of you that are really, really low over here. And when we aggregate it, that is where the power comes in. So I also am a huge believer, and I say this all the time, know why you're going outside the lines. If you're going outside the lines and you are a smaller office and you have an average case size of $2 million, that's awesome. You should know that you're a little bit different and capitalize on that difference. But nationwide speaking, most offices aren't doing that. And I think that can solve two things. One, it can help you see where you're different and you can, again, capitalize on that. But two, it can also help you rest assured. Yeah. As much as advisors want to be different, they also don't want to be different. And I have done this a very long time, and you all have FOMO, and you all want to kind of be similar, and there's not really a real truth scoreboard. Yeah. That's our goal, right? And again, this isn't me changing benchmarks. It's me just giving you the information and saying, hey, look, this is what's happening. And when you look at the prospect story, I forgot what page it's on, but you will see there's not a massive difference, especially between the other three. There is that small difference for the smaller offices, but when you put the other three together, they're nearly right on top of each other for stick rates, movement to a second meeting stick rate, and 2 close rates. That's 5 different data points that they're neck and neck on. So you are unique in maybe some ways that you do it, but when we put you all together, you are all very, very similar. So you're not alone.
I feel like that's really freeing, though, is kind of once you hit that 40 million, man, it just kind of changes. Like, you just kind of get your processes together. And I know 100 million is really the turning point, but I do feel like once you kind of hit that 41 million, 41, it's like you really are on your way to that because you're very similar to the offices. I want to touch also on kind of the FOMO aspect because your study shows some of the core marketing funnels that we see. And we've seen these across all of our aggregate studies, but everybody is looking for the shiny object and everybody is looking for something that's going to work. Was there a secret lead source that advisors are missing and should be aware of within the study that you found, especially maybe for the smaller offices that want to try new things, but they potentially want to be really cash conscious? Was there anything that's like you just uncovered in that?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
Long answer, people all the time are underutilizing long-term nurture and drip campaigns. It's so underutilized. It's not even our top thing, but the people that are and the people that are starting to do that, it's the best play. These people were warm leads. Touch on them. They just weren't ready to retire at the time. It does not take that much of an investment like it does a dinner seminar to go, convince cold leads that they're warm leads. That is one of the most underutilized, least investment options that hardly anyone uses, and I think it's crazy.
I love that. No, and there's several good ones that we even partner with. So if you're looking for recommendations, let us know, and we're happy to kind of send you that way because it makes such a difference. I mean, even in our business, we need to do more of that too, just as a reminder. I think people already know about you. They already were somewhat interested in what you wanted, and maybe it wasn't the right time, and now is. So capitalize on that. I think that's really, really, really good advice.
Thanks.
Can you walk us through kind of what a healthy marketing dial looks like for each office size?
Yes. So the specifics on there, we kind of already went over those on like the percentages of where they come from. But as far as what they are, I wouldn't, kind of like we just talked about, and I will refer back to that question because the shiny ideas can be anything, right? I've seen everything from like Zoom calls and sending gift cards and days at the zoo. We have an office that takes people to the Kentucky Derby. I mean, there's so many different things that you guys can do for shiny ideas, but I like to at least just put in that like 10 to 20% for that piece. And then the 40 to 60 for existing clients and referrals and replacements. And then we need to have live events. Echoing, it can be dinner seminars or it can be workshops. And that was one thing too, backing it up to our aggregate study when we looked at everything for the nation. Workshops are increasing. Workshops are getting a lot more popular. They aren't necessarily more successful. I don't know how people would even define that, but really what's happening is just more people are doing them. So we're getting a lot more new business coming from them. So don't discount those. And then you need some other scalable, dialable funnel. And again, I don't care what that is. It just so happened for the 120 million, it was radio. So it really is what works for your practice.
Yeah. And we're also not saying go do radio tomorrow if you're a $100 million office and about 120. It's not that. You have to really also understand how to do radio. That's not just one you can pick up tomorrow. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time and a lot of preparation for that. But it is good to hear radio. I'm just such a fan of radio. I don't know why. I think it's just this, like, everybody discards them and is like, no, radio's old,
so
it's
old
antiquated.
School, yeah,
like who's listening to the radio? Well, clearly someone is, man. Okay. So it just is what
people,
it is.
People still go to dinner seminars and they still listen to the radio. So stop trying to make it like we don't. I will say TV's in there too. We have several offices. Now it was not, and I don't want to disquote myself here. Hold on. I don't think I saw it in any of the actual segments as their highest. But I did see it in there, I think, as a shiny idea for one of them. And we do have several offices that's their stable funnel. That's rare. Hear me say that. That is rare, but it does happen and can happen.
Yep. It also takes the 2 P's, purse and patience. So I feel like radio is a little bit easier of an entry point versus TV is a very high entry point with your dollars. So we also want to touch on referrals. This is a big one. Again, I have a heart for referrals, and for the smaller firms especially, how can they be utilizing their referrals better? Do you have any kind of advice there on how to get more referrals in? Are a lot of them forgetting to talk to people and ask for referrals, or what's kind of some key takeaways from referrals as a whole for the smaller offices?
Yeah. One, I think people just don't ask. They think people are going to just refer them if they're good. Ask. And I know there was a lot of compliance stuff at one point, and then it kind of lessened. And so obviously we have to be compliant and make sure we're following the guidelines that are given to you all. But asking is not a problem. Forming good relationships with the people that are becoming clients and asking things like, when are you retiring? There are and I honestly, I couldn't name them all, but the amount of really, really cool niche referral events that our clients who get a lot of referrals are doing is so cool. That could have its own shiny idea, actually, its own shiny idea segment in and of itself. Like I said, we've got people who go to like renowned museums. They take people to the Derby. They do goat yoga. I mean, those ideas are so cool for referral ideas because one, you're bringing your own clients that you love, and they're bringing their friends who you may or may not love. Usually you love them. And I have heard so many success stories. And actually tying that into, that is where you can work on writing more high net worth people because their friends already trust you. So if that was a category you wanted of, an A client would be high net worth. You guys can categorize your clients however you want. And maybe it's you like them, maybe it's a net worth, however that looks to you. But some people do it by net worth. And then you do an event around that. And then all of a sudden, it's a way less entry level for you to be working with those people because they're already trusted and known by the people who are current clients who are higher net worth.
Yep. Great way to strategize higher net worth clients. And agreed. I think there's so many really cool things people can do. And what a way to even just get to know your clients. We are in such a relational business. And I feel like with AI coming in and with processes and procedures, we forget that. They want to know you. They want to know who you are. And what a better way than to do something fun together and establish that relationship even further before you even ask them for a referral.
Can I pause you there? Because you just said something that reminded me of something else. Okay.
Ooh.
Another piece to the high net worth with the 0 to 40. So there's a lot of advisors, especially if you're new, if you're growing your practice, that feel like you have to prove your knowledge or prove your intelligence or prove why your product is awesome. And I can't tell you enough, Molly just said it, particularly high net worth want relationship. They will trust you the longer you get to know them and show them that you do know your stuff. But typically the smaller firms are just trying to prove their product or over-explain their process or over-explain what they do. And it's not working well. That's why high net worth are leaving, is because it's not relationally driven. It's knowledge driven and transactional driven. So that is just another little piece of wisdom, nugget of wisdom for the 0 to 40s.
That's huge. I was actually just at an event speaking, and they had one of their very, very successful advisors after, and he was kind of going through the different processes that they do for first appointment, second appointment, and third appointment. And that was his exact thing. He said, do not talk about a single product in your first meeting. Not one. They can go Google it after and they get concerned and because you didn't explain it fully, you can't explain it fully in the first meeting. And he said he spends all of the first meeting just trying to hear them out. What are their needs? What are their goals? What are their kids' names? What are their grandkids' names? That's all he does in the first. And I want to see the data because part of me was like, I don't believe it. But he said he quote unquote said he has an 80% close rate based on just doing that. Again, cannot confirm. He said he has the data. Okay. I'm going to go look at it because I have questions. And the ones that didn't close were because they weren't a good fit, quote unquote. But all good. But the whole point is it is a relational thing. It is important to be relational. And that is the biggest thing. People don't choose you because you have products. Realistically, 90% of you have access to similar products, but they choose you because they want to work with you. So believe in yourself, make it a big thing. So love it. Kind of as we're wrapping up here, your data suggests that scaling isn't about doing things radically different. It's about executing fundamentals better. Can you just unpack and maybe just a little bit more on that and how fundamentals are key? Are there any benchmarks that you can share or anything fundamentals-wise that you think would help listeners?
I have seen more practices grow at a faster rate and become giants by changing one thing by 5% at a time. That's my 5% rule. I talk about it all the time. I did a coaching call today with a guy who was like, the 5% is amazing for us. It's been helping so much. That's the fundamental piece of it. And you start with the TTA top 5. I'll go through them quickly, but they're on our website. They're basically on all of our literature, but it's the stick rate, close rate, average case size, cost per client and cost per set, and pending days. And pending people. So if you know those 5 things and you know our benchmarks because we give them to you on an annual basis, what can you change? What's low? What can you change by 5%? Do not go out to get something up by 30%. It's not going to work. You don't even have the skills or the knowledge. You got to try something and see if that moves the dial first for 90 days before you go in guns a-blazing. And so from a fundamental standpoint, I'm just such a believer in take 2 things and change them by 5%, and you will get there. I've watched it year over year with offices, and it's a lot easier to do that than to redo your entire sales process because we can't close. I'll tell you right now, that's probably not the problem. That's usually not the problem. It's something else. So, huge believer in that.
And start at the beginning. I think a lot of people just look at their ROI and just look at their close rate, and they're not looking at your stick rate, moving people from first to second. Like, where is it? Can you break it down by funnel? Can you break it down by advisor? It might be one advisor or one funnel that's lowering that 5% so quickly. And if we trained or dropped a funnel or changed our processes in that funnel, we could easily do 5%. I love that.
It might be days between appointments. You might be taking 30 days between appointments, and you all say our office policy is 14 and you don't know the real number. Well, I'm telling you, if they're coming in 14 days versus 30 days, you're going to write double the amount of business versus half, right? Like it's crazy how just days between appointments can totally jack with data too. So,
yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't know that. And I feel like that's a very key point is days between appointments matter. So look at it, know what number it really is, not your office policy. I love a good policy. Great. If you're not following it, that's not helpful, you know? Yep. So I think that's a huge thing. And I think that's one piece that a lot of advisors rationalize away, that they're like, oh, no, we are 14 days between. And that's not really the case. So kind of last question, if an advisor is listening right now and they know their office size, what are kind of the top 3 numbers they should check today against the study, and where can they find the study? And I can kind of talk about that as well, but top 3 numbers, maybe it's already the top 5 that you already talked about, but any others specifically from the study that they should be paying attention to?
So I will say the top 5 that I already talked about, but a few extra things that are in the national piece start in the study on page 22, and we have given everybody a 1-page printout of everything for that office segment. So it's awesome because they've got everything on there. It has all the top 5, but it also has how many set meetings per month are needed to hit kind of your same size segment. How many are you guys setting? How many new clients per month? We do have the first year ROI. We do have a gap percentage in there, which we didn't go into, which is always a long explanation. And then we have the ideal marketing dial. So every single page, there's 4 pages, and it has each of those things starting on page 22 in the study. So that's where I'd start. Get the study, look on page 22, but it is the top 5 things and a couple other items that we threw in for everybody.
You know I love a good printout. So
it's a great printout.
It's a great printout. I'm going to frame it. Be like, she worked so hard on this. I did. No, but for anyone that wants to study, you can find it in our $10 billion library, along with many, many other resource papers, which is incredible. Erica is so skilled at this to make it also into layman's terms and really understand data, because it can be kind of something that people are hesitant about. But you can find it in the $10 billion library. That is on our website, trackthatadvisor.com. You can also email hello@trackthatadvisor.com, and you can buy the study individually if you do not want a full subscription to the Resource Center. You can buy it individually, and we're happy to handle that. Also, if you have questions, feel free to email hello@trackthatadvisor.com. We love questions, or if another topic for a research paper. We always like to get ideas on kind of the pulse of what's going on there. So feel free to reach out, hello@trackthatadvisor.com. Erica, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It's always so fun to talk to you, but also I just learned so much, and I'm so thankful for all of your skill sets and knowledge there.
Thank you. You ask the best questions. I tell you that all the time, but you're a great question asker.
I'm really just very nosy. I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? So awesome. But thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. See ya.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Advisor Summit podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share it with someone who could benefit from the conversation. Thanks for being part of the Advisor Summit community. Your support means the world to us.